This podcast serves Middle Tennessee every weekday morning, and it's made possible by member support. Learn how you can make a difference at WPLN.org/support.
This is the Nashvillager Podcast. It's July 30th, 2025. On this day in 1965, the federal law regarding Social Security got a really big amendment. That's when President Lyndon B. Johnson signed the Medicare and Medicaid Act. It established two new health care programs, one for the elderly and the other for people with limited incomes. The act was a long time coming. Almost 2 decades prior, President Truman started a huge debate when he suggested the U.S. create a national health program for everyone, kind of like what most European nations have now. Obviously, that didn't happen, but the discussion didn't let up. And by the mid-60s, America reached the consensus that something had to be done for the most vulnerable people, folks whose ability to pay the doctor was being outpaced by the rising cost of health care, the ones private insurance didn't really want to cover. But those vulnerable people were split up into two groups, served by two different programs, so that those programs could be run differently. Medicare, for older folks, is an entirely federal operation. But Medicaid, which helps children and working-age people, is essentially a partnership between the feds and state officials. I'm Nina Cardona, and this is your daily digest of what's happening around Middle Tennessee with historical context from Nashville Public Radio, WPLN News. You know, aside from whatever political disagreement is reaching a fever pitch at any given moment, I'm not sure there's anything where liberals and conservatives in this nation part ways more routinely and consistently than the question of who should get state assistance. I mean, a lot of times there's agreement that there aren't enough resources for everybody, so some kind of line should be drawn. But there's always a fight over where the line should lie. Who gets the help? Who doesn't? Plus, fights over whether more money should be allocated for helping out the people who could use it. And Medicaid is a perpetual subject of both of those arguments. That's sort of exacerbated by the fact that both the state and the federal governments are involved, which always seems to invite disagreement. And here in Tennessee, there's an extra level of possibility for those debates because here we don't just have Medicaid, we have TennCare. Now, back when I first started reporting the news at WPLN, we used to make a point of always referring to TennCare as the state's Medicaid waiver program, which it still is. We stopped using that particular phrasing, though, because we realized not enough people understood what that meant. Our shorthand just wasn't as effective as we hoped it might be. And it wasn't always that important to the heart of the stories we were telling. But TennCare is a little different from most other states' Medicaid programs. Okay, so back when Medicaid was new, it was just for people with a specific range of disabilities and for parents and children on public assistance. But in the 80s, pregnant folks on public assistance rolls were made eligible. Then eligibility for families rose from those on public assistance to households living below the poverty line, and then up to 133% of the poverty line. A lot of those changes were driven by the rising cost of health care. Inflation in that sector was outpacing the rest of the economy. By the 90s, Medicaid was going through a really rough spell. The federal government was requiring states to expand eligibility without the funding to pay for it. In Tennessee, things were made especially untenable because one of the ways the state paid for its portion of the program was an unpopular tax on nursing home stays. That tax was up for renewal, which was unlikely. All of that combined meant the state's Medicaid program was in a financial tailspin. And the governor at the time, Ned Ray McWhorter, championed a solution that he called TennCare. The idea was this: the state would be in better position to expand coverage to more people if it could get a waiver from the federal government to reorganize Tennessee's Medicaid into a managed care system, or MCO. Under that model, private insurance companies act as a go-between of sorts. The insurer who operates an MCO gets a lump sum per each enrollee, and that company is responsible for managing the costs of providing care to those people. The waiver was granted. The MCOs were set up. TennCare went into effect in January of 1994. And almost immediately, the concept ran into problems. That August, the Tennessee Medical Association sued the state for the way it required doctors to accept TennCare patients. And that lawsuit was dismissed, but clearly the program was already on shaky ground with physicians. That probably wasn't helped by different MCOs in the system paying doctors according to different models. Costs ballooned quickly, and by the end of the year, some groups were already being cut out of eligibility. And on top of everything, a new governor took office the next year. McWhorter was a Democrat. His successor, Don Sundquist, was a Republican. So, of course, TennCare was a huge political football. And, of course, Sundquist needed to make his go at reorganizing something that was only a year old. It was not a great way for a giant assistance program to get started, and the complications just kept snowballing. There were more lawsuits. Insurance companies pulled out of running the MCOs. One of them went bankrupt. TennCare spiraled into a funding shortfall worth hundreds of millions of dollars, which, remember, is the problem that switching to this model was supposed to fix. Things got so bad that Sundquist, despite being a Republican, proposed a state income tax. That went about as well with Republican voters as you might expect. By 2002, less than a decade after TennCare was established, the state went to the federal government asking for a different Medicaid waiver. This time, the program was split into two pieces to stabilize the sinking ship while the state figured out what on earth it was going to do to fix things. Figuring that out took several years. The governor's office changed hands again, this time to Democrat Phil Bredesen. I started reporting for WPLN around this time, and I remember covering so many heartbreaking legislative hearings, listening to testimony from people who'd gone bankrupt from their medical bills, or folks who'd experienced being warehoused in facilities at a young age because they'd been denied at-home care. They were telling their stories to give a real-life face to the decisions lawmakers had to make about who would be eligible for TennCare and who was on their own to pay for medical coverage. And this truly did drag on for years. Fast forward to 2013. We're back to a Republican in the governor's office, Bill Haslam. As part of the Affordable Care Act, the federal government offered states money to expand Medicaid. The way it worked was that the new people added into the program would be given funds to buy a plan on the healthcare marketplace. But Haslam wanted to tinker with the offer in some pretty substantial ways. Ultimately, he turned down the expansion and instead floated his own state-driven plan to add more people to the rolls with a lot of caveats. And that kicked off a new round of debate about how to tinker with TennCare and its funding model. Over the next several years, Republicans resurfaced an idea they had unsuccessfully floated during the Bredesen-era TennCare overhaul to completely change TennCare's federal funding mechanism. So in 2021, they made it happen. TennCare switched over to basically operating as a block grant. That means there's one set chunk of federal money that's given to the state each year, and when it runs out, it's out. That's a big contrast to the standard Medicaid funding, which requires both the state and federal governments to pitch in their part for everyone who meets the eligibility standards. Now, I've lost count of the number of waivers TennCare has been through, but suffice it to say, the program has evolved enough since 1994 to now be quite different from the way most other states handle Medicaid. It's confusing for experts to follow, much less the rest of us. But here's where things stand now, according to state data. 1.5 million Tennesseans get their health coverage through TennCare. That's about 20% of the people who live in the state, including roughly half of Tennessee's kids. And the program costs about $18 billion a year. In just a few minutes, it's this week's edition of What We're Wednesday. That's coming up after the newscast.
At WPLN, we tell stories about honoring our families.
If he become a monk, that means that mom and dad will go to heaven when they pass away.
And preserving memories.
I never heard of a Rosenwald School. Nobody never told me that's where I went.
I'm Char Daston, and my reporting connects you with your neighbors and the important moments in their lives.
Here's the latest from WPLN News. Nashville is now on its 29th straight day of 90-degree weather and still under its first extreme heat warning since 2023. The conditions are seriously affecting those who are unhoused. On Sunday, Metro's Heat Patrol handed out cold water to those who were outdoors. Antonio Brooks received water and a bus pass, which he says he was grateful to have. He also had a policy suggestion to get homeless residents safely through the heat wave.
I know they had like the winter shelter or whatnot. The way that he's been here lately, I feel like they should open up like the same area when it's hot outside until the temp goes down. Like really, it's not safe out here for anybody.
Brooks says he's been trying to keep cool by riding the bus. We reached him in front of the courthouse. Well, during this long and oppressive heat wave, air conditioning can keep many workplaces cool, but not all workplaces are indoors with AC. Omar Contreras does landscaping on the Greenway in Metro Center, where he was blowing grass on hot asphalt. Justin Barney was on the scene.
Today's the 28th day in a row that it's over 90 degrees in Nashville. You're wearing long sleeves, you're wearing a vest, you're wearing a hat, you're wearing a neck. How's it been out here the past month?
Yesterday was a very, very difficult day to work here.
But Contreras said that he likes the challenge of working in the heat.
It's like a strong thing to do, and I like to do strong things. So all the people that like or work in this kind of work need to be strong, you know.
Contreras' employers are more concerned than he is about the heat. They're meeting today to remind the crew to stay hydrated, rest up, and if it gets over 95 degrees, they get to take those long sleeves off. Justin Barney, WPLN.
Today's high temperature could be in the upper 90s, and the heat index, which is what it really feels like when you factor in humidity, could be as high as 109. High school students in Tennessee may soon no longer need to take a foreign language class to graduate, but some insist that these lessons go beyond the classroom by teaching empathy for people unlike themselves. WPLN's Camelia Burris has more.
Emma Hatcher and Michaela Webb did not want to take a foreign language class in high school, but they did so because it's required. The 20-year-old college juniors from rural East Tennessee drove 4 hours to Nashville to speak before the Tennessee Board of Education last week. They say those classes led to scholarships, extra income, and more cultural awareness.
I never knew how many Spanish speakers lived in my town until I started speaking Spanish.
That's Emma. Her high school was in the middle of a cow field in Bristol, Tennessee. The small town isn't very diverse, and before studying a foreign language, she often overlooked those who were different.
Now my whole family is aware of these communities that are living amongst us that we never even considered to be living in our communities until I had this opportunity from my high school Spanish class.
Her friend Michaela says learning another language improved her experiences not only in her community, but in her travels abroad.
Most Americans who travel would just go over there and expect them to speak your language. But you're coming to them. If you at least act like you're trying, they're going to treat you so well.
One board member recently questioned why high school students need to study a foreign language if their career paths don't require it. Both Emma and Michaela say that studying Spanish made them better students overall. Emma also told the board that many other states require their students to study a foreign language, and Tennessee students who don't do so will be left behind. The college students have studied abroad in 11 countries and are planning to study in Spain together next year. Camelia Burris, WPLN News.
Members of Nashville's Community Review Board say they are not being kept informed about what's happening with a major investigation of alleged misconduct in the Metro Nashville Police Department. More than a year ago, former Police Lieutenant Garrett Davidson went public with a 61-page complaint accusing MNPD brass of collaborating with state Republicans to gut local police oversight boards. He also described a culture of unfairness and a lack of accountability within the department. Mayor Freddie O'Connell appointed a former U.S. attorney at an outside law firm to investigate. Since filing the original complaint, Davidson has been indicted for allegedly stealing and leaking internal MNPD documents, including some related to the Covenant School shooting. Now the Community Review Board says it has not received any word from the outside law firm about its investigation of Davidson's original complaint. The board cited records showing the law firm has billed Metro for hundreds of thousands of dollars of work, but has not shared any of their findings with the board, according to the Nashville Banner. The board has voted to send a letter to the mayor asking for an update on the inquiry. Davidson County Election Administrator Jeff Roberts plans to retire just a few months shy of a decade in the position. Since 2016, he's overseen 2 presidential elections, multiple specially called elections, and a round of redistricting. Roberts took office after his predecessor's turbulent departure, that person who was found using his city credit card for personal expenses. Roberts has offered to train his replacement before leaving at year's end.
When I came on, it was, you had to jump in the deep end of the pool, and it might be better if we brought the next person on with a little less stress right off the bat.
Roberts is a Nashville native. The Tennessean reports he previously worked in finance roles for the Metro and the state government. At a meeting this week, election commissioners praised his attention to detail and commitment to making voting as simple and accessible as possible. Those officials want to move quickly to find a replacement. On the horizon is a special congressional election this fall for the District 7 seat vacated by Mark Green, followed by next year's race for governor. Logistics firm Geodis is laying off another group of mid-state employees and closing a Mount Juliet facility. In a statement sent to the Nashville Business Journal, the company says the cutbacks are happening because one of the company's customers is going out of business. In all, almost 100 jobs will be eliminated by September 30th. However, a Geodis spokesperson says most of the 40 people laid off in the first round of cuts have been placed in new roles at its 2 other facilities in Wilson County. Elon Musk's The Boring Company will hold a hiring event today as one of its first steps toward constructing the new Music City Loop. Earlier this week, The Boring Company unveiled plans to construct an underground tunnel connecting the airport to downtown Nashville. The project will be funded entirely by Musk's company, and it has the backing of the governor and other state leaders. Nashville's mayor has said he has questions about the tunnel's impact. At the unveiling event Monday, Boring Company President Steve Davis said the project will bring a lot of jobs, although numbers, like many of the logistical details, remain unclear. The company says it's looking to hire engineers, operations coordinators, electricians, welders, and mechanics for the project. Boring is promoting a hiring event today at 6 p.m., but it is not open to all. Interested applicants must submit a form and a resume on the Boring Company website. The company says it will send the event's location to those who are accepted. Tennessee State University is renovating its historic Davis Humanities Building. Once a place for administrative activities, the building will become a student-centered space. The university plans to modernize it while still maintaining the historic essence of the building, which has been on campus for nearly 100 years. It was last updated in 1994. The transformation will include upgraded classrooms with enhanced technology, collaborative study areas, new spaces for student-led activities, and improved access for people with disabilities. Another improvement includes stormwater management solutions to ensure long-term sustainability. The project aligns with TSU's 10-year plan to modernize and expand its campus. The expected completion date is October 2026. You'll find more news anytime at WPLN.org. 2 of Nashville's entertainment traditions collide at an event this week, and one of them might surprise you. Here's Marquise.
I'm Marquise Munson here with another edition of Nashville Public Radio's What Where Wednesday, keeping you up to date with the happenings in Nashville this week. Here are some events to check out. Emily Hines performs an album release show at the Blue Room, and Poetry vs. Hip Hop 10-year anniversary celebration is at City Winery. On Monday, Ear Hustle Podcast will be live at the Basement East. For more events, head over to WNXP.org/events.
I'm short on time, no doubt.
This week for What Were Wednesday, we feature Pro Wrestling Symphony happening this Sunday at Brooklyn Bowl. Mixing pro wrestling with live music, the promotion officially ran their first show back in June. Owners Rory Miller, Connor Casey, and Pat Dooley met at a wrestling training school, wanting to go to wrestling shows consistently and feeling like no one was running them in Nashville properly. The three thought, why not us? Miller says they put a lot of care, time, and attention into this, wanting to see pro wrestling succeed on an independent level, especially with its history in Middle Tennessee.
Nashville really does have one of the richest histories of pro wrestling in the greater United States area. We're part of the much lauded Memphis wrestling territory. In fact, my grandfather was a ring announcer for the Goulas promotion that ran through Middle Tennessee, including Nashville. Name anybody that's ever been a star in wrestling, they've come through Nashville, and in a lot of cases, they sold out buildings well before any of us were born. And there's been a bit of a gap from about the mid-2010s or so until today. And there have been other promotions that have cropped up and tried to reinvigorate that wrestling history here in the city.
This match is scheduled for one
Pro Wrestling Symphony, of course, referring to Music City. We are a music hub, so we didn't want to stray away from that. So Symphony is a collection of different musicians with different skill sets and abilities coming together to make something magical all together. And we think that's when pro wrestling is at its best, when you have people of various skill sets and different types of abilities coming in to put on an incredible show. And so at the end of the day, that's where Pro Wrestling Symphony comes from, and that's the ethos we try to hold on to. And really, what we kind of say when we're putting these matches together and everything is we want to put on shows that we would want to see as fans. We have a values list with our company, and our number one value is that pro wrestling is for everyone. And that's why our shows are all ages. That's why it happens at matinee hours, so that everybody has an opportunity to be there and not hold kids up past their bedtime. But that also means that we have people of all different backgrounds, ethnicities, and identities that are going to be performing in front of folks in Music City. To me, the best shows are in venues that are less than 1,000 seats, because you do have that intimacy and everybody feels like they're in the same room together and not just in a stadium and you're watching someone from, what feels like the next town over. But at the Brooklyn Bowl, we're blessed with the way that everything's laid out. There's tons of space for folks to pack it in, but then also everyone feels like they're neighbors. So you get that really high energy that you would get at a concert as well. So we definitely wanted the venue to catch people's attention, and another way to help us stand out, because as much as we love, admire, and respect anybody that runs any wrestling show anywhere, we didn't want ours to just be a gymnasium. We wanted it to be something unique and something special, and we think being in Music City just makes sense to be in a music venue. I think regardless of the art form, art is better experienced in person. Doesn't matter what it is. I might go to Las Vegas and go to a magic show, and I'm going to have an incredible time. Even if I've never seen a magic show before, even if I don't know who the magician is, I know I'm going to have a good time with it. And same thing with wrestling. I think I'm not much of a sports fan, but I love going to see the Nashville Sounds play in person. I love going to a Preds game because of that energy, that feeling that everybody has of coming together and rooting for your team and everything. And you get that exact same experience in live pro wrestling and at Pro Wrestling Symphony. I had a friend of mine who went to their first ever wrestling show with our company and said to one of his buddies with him, "Man, I didn't know I would have this much fun being here." He's in on it. He understands what it is, but he's not a fan, but he was in it and he was part of it, and he realized that the more he engaged with it, the more fun it was for him. And I think that's true with everything. One of the things we're trying to present to fans as well, or soon-to-be fans, is you can come to Pro Wrestling Symphony, have an amazing time, and that's it. And you don't have to invest yourself in the wrestling community. You don't have to know all the backstory. We're going to give you enough of it up front, and you're going to know who to root for, who to boo, and you're going to have a good time no matter what.
If you want more wrestling this weekend, Classic City Wrestling is at the Basement East on Saturday night. For more information about Pro Wrestling Symphony and other events happening this week, visit WNXP.org. My name is Marquise Munson, and thank you for listening to another edition of What Were Wednesday.
Thanks for listening to the Nash Villager podcast. We take this look at what's happening around Nashville every weekday. If you like it, go ahead and subscribe on your favorite podcasting app and tell a friend or give us a mention on your socials. That really helps get the word out. And of course, everything at WPLN News is listener supported, and you can become a member at WPLN.org. That's it for today. Thanks so much for listening. Let's make this day a good one, and we'll catch back up tomorrow.